Today we're doing a 2025 rookie mock draft, 2 QB, 2 rounds with a twist. And the twist is we got some landing spots. And how are we getting those landing spots? By doing a PFF mock draft on the simulator and having it simulate the draft for us. No humans involved, picking those players and their landing spots. That way we can react to them and get our mock draft. I will have someone mock draft this for us and we will review the picks. But before we dig in, you need to click that subscribe button right now. We're looking at these rookies every day. I got almost all the Senior Bowl clips from the top rookies and more coming at you. No other fantasy football YouTube site has that. We're looking at high school recruits. We're doing deep dives. It's all right here. Click that button. Stop missing out. But to get our landing spots, we got to do our draft, and we're going to PFF. And we are going to watch the draft. And in order to do this draft, I have to take over a team. I'm going to take over the Eagles. They got a running back. They're good at wide receiver. They're pretty good at tight end. They don't need to pick up any fancy assets right now. So honestly, I'm going to pick non-fantasy players so there's no humans involved in this draft for the Eagles. That way, I'm not messing up the draft. It's all computer. And here we go. First pick for the Eagles. Actually, a decent pick for them. Tyleik Williams. Big old boy coming down. Now we're into the second round. Picks are flying off the board. Kaleb Johnson might go to the third round. You see that. Alfred Collins, they're going to beef it up on defense. Now we're going with their next pick. Jalen Milroe still on the board. Jalen Milroe still on the board. And we're done. Just a quick view for you. Right there we go, first round. Take a look with the player pool, but we're going to be drafting these guys up. Take a quick look. Mock draft time. We're getting ready to start the first round. We only did 3 rounds of the PFF mock draft simulator, so the back end of the second round gets a little funny, but still interesting to look at when you look at the landing spots and these players and the player values. But keep that in mind. Add in a couple running backs from the 4th round because that's probably what's going to happen. However, we will have the players drafted and listed in the back end of the video, so check the timestamps for that. But we're going on to our first pick of the first round off the board. Mock draft with landing spots, 2 rounds, super flex. Here we go. Ashton Jeanty's coming off the board. First pick off the board. It does not matter. We're going to the 49ers. Christian McCaffrey's there. Nobody cares. Ashton Jeanty drafted 11th pick overall in the mock draft simulator. And I believe he's landing spot proof. This is starting to say that. Even though it's a sample size of 1, there's a chance this could happen. And if Christian McCaffrey is not for long and it's trending that way, this could happen. This could happen. They like to run the football. They have some other running backs on the roster. But Ashton Jeanty, for a team that likes to pound it, for a team that's looking at a running back like this right in the face, I mean, it could happen, but I'm not here to talk about the real NFL draft. I believe Ashton Jeanty, no matter where he goes, due to the draft capital, due to what people saw in college football, due to how weak the quarterback class is, super flex, even in 1 QB, 101, unless something marvelous happens to one of the other players. Now we're moving on to our next pick coming off the board, and this draft's going to be interesting, and it's going to be a fun one, especially once we get further down the board. Try and guess who's coming off now at the 102. It's Cam Ward. Cam Ward, it's super flex. We're going to the Tennessee Titans. We're holding that super flex value. You're going to get some starts out of him, and even if you work up the ho-hum production, that's still going to be better than 80% of the field here when you're looking at these rookies. And Cam Ward has some upside. He was a hot prospect in the transfer portal. We went to Miami. We transitioned to that offense rather quickly. We might be able to do that with the Titans here. First pick off the board too. First pick, 101, 102 in Superflex right now. And that's happening in a lot of leagues. It's pretty standard. So I understand with that pick. Our next pick coming off the board here at the 103. Here's when we're going to start seeing some questions here. And a lot of people are going to be wondering what happened in this draft a little bit. because he sometimes falls. And a lot of you guys don't want him at this spot. He went at this spot, Shedeur Sanders, and he went to the Browns. A lot of people are saying the Browns ain't going to draft him because I see a lot of mock drafts, a lot of people saying that. Again, this was a simulator. He went to the Browns here. Second pick off the board. That means they did their due diligence. They looked at him. They said, hey, this is our future. So Shedeur Sanders, he's got the super flex spot, that super flex value in this position, and he's being valued rather highly as the second pick off the board. They're just making that gamble. They're hoping the Browns build around him at the 103 spot. But now you got a question. What happened to the other players? What's going on at wide receiver? What's going on at running back? What are the landing spots? Did anybody fall? Next player off the board at the 104. T-Mac, and he goes to the Raiders. Going to the Raiders. I don't see him going there in many mock drafts. But this is a very good wide receiver prospect. They need to add talent at the wide receiver spot. And are you going to be higher or lower on him if he does go to the Raiders, if this happens at the 104? Are you going to be sad about that, considering he's the top wide receiver on most boards, a lot of boards? I got him up there. This is a guy that can get downfield, get a deep A-dot. We saw that over the course of his career. And he's very sticky, very strong hands, plucks it out of the air. Does not matter if he's contested. So bad quarterback play may not matter that much. We also got Brock Bowers to contend with early in his career. But the wide receiver depth chart's bare. It's bare. And he could step in and be a guy there at 104. Top 10 pick at wide receiver. You're not going to get many of these guys in this year's draft. You're just not much competition at the wide receiver spot, especially on the top end. But we're moving on to our next pick. We know the running back position is going to be hot. We know the wide receiver position is going to be rather interesting. At the 105, coming off the board, Omarion Hampton going to the Ravens. So in this scenario, Derrick Henry's not for long. We could probably tell that by his contract, by his age, and we're replacing him with another big running back. And they want to run the football. I don't think they're going to trust the guys behind Derrick Henry for the long term. This is a future pick and also could be used for this year. Derrick Henry's older, so he could get banged up, and they're using a first-round pick on him, 27th overall. He's a first-round running back going in a run-first offense. You may have to wait a season, but back-to-back 1,000-plus yard seasons, a total of 30 touchdowns in his last two seasons. Fifth pick off the board, Omarion Hampton, big-time running back prospect from North Carolina. And if a running back's getting drafted in the first round that you deem talented going into the draft, you might as well select him, even though you're going to have to wait a little bit. You might as well pull that trigger to see what happens. But we got to move on because we got a lot of players to look at today, and we're going to our next player off the board. Did running back go heavy after Hampton went off? Did people start pulling running back? Or did things get a little tricky? Did things get a little dicey? This next pick's rather interesting. Emeka Egbuka, 106, drafted by the Dolphins. This indicates to me that there's something going on at the wide receiver spot over the offseason. Dolphins thought Emeka Egbuka was too good to pass up on. On top of that, we got some speedsters there with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. They experienced some injuries at wide receiver, but now we got a technical route runner who's like a running back after the catch that could really add some nuance to this team, really add a different flavor and style to the passing game. And there's other positions of need, but we're not addressing that for the Dolphins. When we look at him in this offense, it's a fast-paced offense. He creates separation, and he's going to give this team something different. I wouldn't be surprised if he gels well in this offense, considering the speed it has and considering how well it's built, that he could be there for the long term, being productive, and after he develops, could be one of the better wide receivers in football when it comes to fantasy production. I would not be surprised. This could be a sneaky situation, a sneaky spot. I just saw the pick. It's a sneaky one. I don't think you can guess it. I don't think it's possible for you to guess this one. And it's one of those picks you're like, whoa, but the real NFL draft will do that. The real NFL draft will do that, and you know that. You know that. Look at this. Cam Scatterboo off the board at 107. 53rd pick overall to the Steelers. He looks like a Steeler. He runs like a Steeler. He acts like a Steeler. It makes sense. It really makes sense. There's other running backs on the board when he got selected that you might have a little higher than him. But look at the production. 1,700 yards this year. He was a gamer. 102 missed tackles. He was a gamer this year. 1,200 yards after contact this year. More yards after contact than a lot of running backs in this class. And he's going to the Steelers. Workhorse mentality. Lunch pail grinder. I think this is a good fit. I would not be surprised if he lands in a juicy situation that everybody's going to start salivating for him. That he jumps up the board, whether you like it or not. But that's a good spot. We're moving on to the next pick, though. We got to keep this draft moving. It's rather fun, though, when you get the landing spots, especially when they're picked by a generator. This is a fun pick here at the 108s. A very fun one. We're looking at Travis Hunter going to the Jaguars. I've mocked him to the Jaguars a few times when we've done mock drafts on the simulator. And the thing about him going to the Jaguars is that they could use him at both cornerback and wide receiver, and this makes sense. Behind Brian Thomas Jr., they're not jacked at wide receiver. They could really use somebody like this and play him on both sides if they can. And he could probably run 15 to 20 routes per game, and that's enough to make an impact for fantasy and make an impact for the Jacksonville Jaguars. It may not be dependable, but as the 5th pick off the board, you know workload's coming his way, one way or another, which is very enticing. Let's move on to the next pick. We're going on to the 109. Things are going to start getting fun here. It's going to get very fun, especially with this pick coming off the board. Our boy Kaleb Johnson going to the Saints. So lots to say here. Alvin Kamara, his tenure here is almost done, if not done. And Kaleb Johnson's about to take over because he looks like he's going to be the heir apparent to Alvin Kamara. Kendre Miller's done. He's cooked. He's toast. He's in the doghouse. Injured too often. Kaleb Johnson, the RB2 for many people, including me, but he's up there with Omarion Hampton. They're pretty close together. Very good running back prospect. Will fit well in this offense. This team's got to build a lot. However, they do need to get somebody at the running back position for the long term. I don't think Alvin Kamara is going to hold up for them for much longer, contract-wise as well. Kaleb Johnson fall into your lap at pick 71. You really have to pull the trigger there. And I look at him to get the workload eventually in this offense at 109. When you're looking at the running back spot, you got a stud prospect and a good landing spots with okay draft capital. You might as well, but it's also depending what's on the board. So we're looking at the board at the 110 pick. Who's coming off? One of our guys, TreVeyon Henderson, to the Patriots, to Drake May, who's looking for a good running back. We saw those running backs last year on the Patriots. It wasn't going too well. He's very explosive. He can catch the ball in the backfield. Pairs very well with Drake May and what they want to do in this offense. And he's also good between the tackles. Big time recruit coming out of high school. We saw it at Ohio State this year, over 1,000 yards, over some extra games with college football playoff, but broke out as a freshman, good in the passing game. He's going to fit well in fantasy for this team. Might even look at him over Kaleb Johnson. You might even want to bump him up a few spots in this rookie mock draft. 110 is pretty safe, very conservative, considering where he went in the draft in the 3rd round, 77 overall. But next pick off the board, 111. This one's sneaky. I kind of forgot about this one. Packers select Dylan Sampson in the 2nd round. So we got a 2nd round running back. What does this say? They want to add some talent to their backfield. Marshawn Lloyd was hurt all year. Maybe they're not too keen on that. They do not want to pass on Dylan Sampson because they got backs there. So they want him really bad. And if this happens, he's getting the draft stock. He's going to get opportunities sooner than later. As long as he's healthy, he's going to eventually be on the field. He's productive in the SEC. And one of the reasons why Tennessee couldn't compete with Ohio State, because he wasn't on the field. He was hurt in that game. Dylan Sampson going to the Packers, going to a team that moves the football, is going to be a good spot for him. Might take some time for him to develop, but we got draft capital. We got talent. 111 in this slot. Really depends on what you think according to what's on the board, but you don't know yet. You don't know yet what's left on the board. You'll know a little bit more after this last pick of the 1st round, 112. Tyler Warren going to the Steelers. Passing volume, quarterback situation for fantasy. They got other tight ends, kind of logjam there. This is a talent they couldn't pass up on. This is a talent that racked up receptions and yards this year. A talent that could really help them in the passing game. They're looking for pass catchers. They're also telling us that the wide receiver well is pretty dry, so they decided to go tight end. Tyler Warren could be a guy that could help you in fantasy. You're at least drafting the talent. You also got the draft capital here, but we're finishing up the first round, and we're getting to go into the second round. The second round is going to be interesting. We only drafted 3 rounds. Player pool's not as deep, so you got to think about the fourth round, what could be in it. Some running backs that didn't get drafted and everything else, because some running backs are going to fall. We got so much talent in this class, so we're going to see some fourth rounders get jumped up a little bit. So when we do this again, I'll definitely have the fourth round in there, fifth round possibly, just to round things out a little bit. But we're going on to round 2. We are here at round 2. Let's see what's going to happen. First pick off the board, Luther Burden to the Colts. That's ugly. That's an ugly landing spot. Great draft capital at 14 overall. The landing spot, the passing volume, competition in the offense. They're log-jammed at wide receiver. It's really hard to go with Luther Burden here, but he's also a very talented wide receiver prospect. They're trying to get Anthony Richardson going. They're doing whatever they can possible. They're getting another pass catcher for the offense. Is this realistic? I hope not. I hope not. But at 201, we have to make this pick here because we got a first-round wide receiver with a lot of talent. Not a great landing spot, but you're going to draft talent over situation, and you're just going to pray that things go your way with this pick. That he starts getting opportunity year 2, year 1, whatever, or he's so talented he can't leave the field. Next pick off the board. This one's a fun one. This one kind of fell to our laps here at 202. Judkins goes 202, 89th pick overall to the Texans. Joe Mixon's not going to be there forever, so you might have to wait a little bit for him, but he has the talent to hold it down between the tackles. This is a good offense. They're always going to be in the hunt for the AFC title. They're always going to be trying to make a playoff appearance. You got CJ Stroud. The offense is always going to be rolling and cooking. Quinshon Judkins here, being the running back for the long term, might be a good fit. Good between the tackles, good size, a grinder. He can catch you out of the backfield. Some people say he can't, but he did it over at Ole Miss. Broke out as a freshman. Very talented running back prospect. Fell a little bit in this draft, but it's okay. I like the landing spot. Now we're going to 203. We got some talent on the board. We got some interesting landing spots. But here, Matthew Golden to the Denver Broncos. They need a wide receiver. They need some talent. They did draft him in the first round. They're going to give him opportunity to prove himself and to fail. Cortland Sutton's not going to be there forever. An older wide receiver with an injury history. He's going to get an opportunity to prove himself with Bo Nix, a quarterback that's on the rise here, and a first-round wide receiver falling into your lap in the second round. Whether you like him or not, you usually just got to pull the trigger and roll with it. But it's also depending on what else is on the board. What else is on the board? Because we got another player looking at us here at 204, and it's Devin Neal. Devin Neal going to the Jaguars. We are a little bit log-jammed at running back, but over the course of time, it could be our backfield. Devin Neal looked good at the Senior Bowl. He's got some size, productive at Kansas, broke out early, productive throughout his career, saying he's going to run fast at the combine. I saw that in an interview. Probably will. He'll probably blow your head back a little bit. And if he goes to somewhere like the Jaguars and he has to wait a year, I think it's fine. Because the talent's there. He's proven to be productive throughout his career. I think this is a steal for Neal. Steal for Neal at 204. I like this landing spot. It conceals him a little bit and allow him to fall down the board a little bit. I like Devin Neal a lot, actually. I like him a lot. At 205, another interesting pick off the board. However, it makes sense, really, when you look at the draft capital. Alec Aomaner coming off the board from Stanford. We talked about him earlier. A very crispy route runner. He burnt up Travis Hunter 2 years ago. Destroyed them. Balled out on him. He's got talent. He's an underrated wide receiver in his class. He's not overly electric. He's not overly productive from a counting stat standpoint. Market share, he's pretty good. But he's a wide receiver that can create separation, that can get it off the break. Might be a good fit for the Buffalo Bills, considering they got Keon Coleman. So you got like two different types of wide receivers there that you drafted kind of high. You're getting a first-round wide receiver here in your rookie draft in the middle of the second round. That's a solid look. And he's also in an offense that's got some firepower. He doesn't have much name cachet. That caused him to fall in this draft a little bit. But still, we got draft capital. We're in a good offense. I can see it on the tape how he can be successful in the NFL level, breaking off routes, sticky hands, creating separation. I could definitely see that. But we're moving on to the next pick. That was an interesting one, especially in the first round. We got another one. We got another one coming off the board here. And it's a good landing spot. DJ Giddens going to the Vikings. They're going to need a running back. They're waiting to the third round. And they got a productive running back from Kansas State who's got some pop in the step. He's going to be getting some opportunities early in his career. Whoever lands with the Vikings are going to be getting some opportunities, at least as the backup. And the backup was getting about 10 opportunities a game. That's a good look for a backup running back, especially a young guy who's trying to get their feet wet. So if they draft a third or fourth rounder and have a veteran in there, that's kind of what we saw with Cam Akers in the back end of the season. So DJ Giddens, if he's behind a veteran in this situation, still you're watching him like a hawk, and will probably eventually get his opportunity to be the starter sooner than later. But we're going to move on to the 207. Things are going to get very interesting because now we got to get a little bit creative and we got to imagine some things because we're looking at the Bengals here. They're drafting Jaden Higgins at the 49th pick, and we're drafting him in the rookie draft at the 207. Jaden Higgins here is doing very well at the Senior Bowl. He's doing well in all the practices. He's really making a name for himself. That got him drafted in the second round, 49th overall. Decent draft capital. So we're trading Higgins for Higgins. Pretty much that's what the Bengals are doing. And he might get some opportunity earlier than expected. Jermaine Burton's ADP jumped when he went to the Bengals. So if they pull the trigger on anybody in the second round in this draft, their ADP is definitely going up. And that's also saying Jermaine Burton's probably cashed out with this pick, that they're not looking for him to step up. And Jaden Higgins might be the man here. Good route runner, good hands. We're moving on to our next pick off the board as things are getting rather interesting here. Because the Lions selected Colston Loveland in the first round. We got competition at tight end. We got competition for targets at running back and wide receiver. It's very hard to project him out in this landing spot, but he's a damn good talent. 208's a good discount for the long term. As he's developing, could be the main tight end there over the long term. Sam Laporta wasn't hot this year. He had some hot runs, but also had some cold runs as well. Wasn't like his rookie season, but you can now use two tight ends, two running backs, your jacked up wide receiver. What are you going to do against the Detroit Lions? They want to bite off your kneecaps. Their coach is a tight end, former tight end, and now he wants more tight ends. Colston Loveland, interesting spot here. Hard to project, but the talent's there. So you're just drafting the talent and you're drafting the draft capital. But we're moving on to our next pick. This pick is interesting due to the landing spot and what they've already drafted. The Colts, 45th overall, drafted Xavier Restrepo. And that's not a great landing spot. I mean, you're not going to beat out Josh Downs. It's going to be hard. He's the incumbent. He's been solid. Josh Downs has an incredible injury history. They drafted A.D. Mitchell in the second round. It's not realistic to draft two wide receivers with what they have on the depth chart. But at 209, with what's on the board, without a fourth round drafted, I can see it happening. But there are other players too. But Restrepo's probably going to struggle for fantasy production in this situation unless we can get some passing volume, unless he can exceed expectations in training camp, really ball out. And he's got some talent. He was a big name coming out of this year. He looked good at Senior Bowl. Maybe we get some opportunities out of him, but we're moving on. We got to get on with this draft here. Another fun pick off the board. The thing about not doing a fourth round, we got some interesting selections, and they all got decent draft capital. That's the thing. The draft capital says, hey, it could happen, but we know something else is going to be coming up. 210, Isaiah Bond going to the Bengals. Upside play, Higgins out, Jermaine Burton crashed out. Isaiah Bond's got talent. This is a gamble play because I believe he needs another year at college, but the talent's there. The talent is there for him to compete with some of the top wide receivers in the National Football League. The production, the experience level at the college level saying, hey, we need more time this season. That might be what he needs. Maybe it takes him some time for the Bengals. Drafted in the 3rd round. 210, upside play here in this Dynasty rookie draft. It makes sense if you're shooting for the moon. But now we're going to the 211. Remember, it's super flex because quarterbacks coming off the board here. Dylan Gabriel going to the Jets. Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be there forever. They're not. They need a contingency play. Dylan Gabriel is accurate. He can spray it all over the field. We saw that in Senior Bowl. Not a great quarterback, but a developmental quarterback, a guy that you can develop to see what happens. Not a guy that's going to be a day one starter. He might be able to surprise you. He might be able to. I would not bet on that, but he might be able to surprise you. Very experienced at the college level. Productive with 3 different programs with over 3,000 passing yards with those programs and over 30 touchdowns in each season with those programs. Dylan Gabriel might be a sneaky option, might be a really good backup, but in Superflex, you're playing that Superflex value, and he does have some draft capital, and he is in a situation where you could see it opening up for him in the not-so-distant future. Now we're looking at the last pick. This is a fun one. This is from the Senior Bowl. He was cooking Tez Johnson to the Seattle Seahawks, and he's going to be taking that Lockett role. That's where he's going to be at, and that's going to be a fun spot for him if they do this. That would be a fun spot for him in real life. I think he'd be more like a 3rd-round rookie pick due to the volume and everything else, and there's going to be other running backs to push him down, but that's a fun pick. That's a fun spot for him. But looking at the draft selections here, quarterback, just 3 went off the board. Jackson Dart did not get drafted. Nobody else got drafted. Ward, Sanders, Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round. Looking at the running backs, all of them got drafted in this rookie mock draft. Jeanty, Hampton, Scatabo, Sampson, Johnson, Henderson, Neal, Judkins, and Giddens. Wide receiver, it got pretty deep. A lot of guys went off the board. The teams that needed wide receiver doubled up at the position. That's something to think about when we use the simulator. So I'm going to toggle the settings for next time. Tight end, Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland. We had some other guys, but they kind of got nuked. Like Fannin versus Bowers. Arroyo went to the Cardinals. Ferguson, 100th overall to the Rams. That's interesting. Hard to pull the trigger in the 2nd round, though, when you have some other upside options. That's the draft, though. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. One thing for watching. Catch you on the next video.